People keep calling Monkey Man Indian John Wick, and you couldn't be more wrong. Monkey Man starts with a myth rooted in Hindu culture. There was once a young monkey named Hanuman. He woke up and felt extremely hungry. He saw a big sphere floating above him, bright red and glistening. Thinking with his belly, Hanuman assumed the sphere was a ripe and juicy piece of fruit, so he leapt up to grab and eat it. However, the red sphere was not a piece of fruit, but the rising sun coming up over the horizon. When the gods had found out what Hanuman did, they punished him, taking away his powers. This was a story that young Bobby was told as a child by his mother when they were living in the forest. Meet Bobby. He fights people for money at these lower end of the city boxing matches. The Tigers Club. When I say he fights for money, I mean he loses for money. When he fights, he wears a monkey mask. While he still fights, he looks for work, trying to find his way to the man he sees in his flashbacks. We don't know who that is yet, but we get these pictures. The ring, the blood, his eyes. Before we dive deeper into the plot and the filmmaking, let's talk about the man behind the film, Dev Patel. Dev Patel was born on the 23rd of April in 1990 in Harrow, the son of Anita, a care worker, and Raju, an IT consultant. His parents are Indian. Please forgive me if I mispronounce this. I'm too white. Gujarati Hindus, though they were both born in Nairobi, Kenya, where there is a significant Indian community. They immigrated to England separately in their teens and first met in London. Patel was raised in the Hindu faith. He speaks some Gujarati. His ancestors came from Jamnagar and Unja in Gujarat, India. He grew up in the Rainers Lane district of Harrow and attended Longfield Primary School and Whitmore High School. Patel had his first acting role as Sir Andrew Aguchik in the school's production of Twelfth Night. Dev has been grinding in the industry for quite a while now, starting in a small little movie called Slumdog Millionaire, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This wasn't his first role entirely, but his breakout hit that brought him into public eye. In an interview from the Rolling Stone, linked below, Dev talks about how the movie came to be. For years, he had this picture in his head, this image. There's a young man, sweaty and battered, standing in a crude wrestling ring in what he described as the armpit of India. There's a crowd there, already whipped into a frenzy. They're screaming, howling insults, throwing garbage at the fighter. He seems unfazed by all of it. Then the figure pulls out that simian mask, slips it on, and puts up his dukes. He had no idea what else there was to this vision, this picture, this dream of his, but he couldn't get out of his mind. He couldn't forget Monkey Man. Dev Patel, like many of us, was another action movie baby.
Just another American who saw too many movies as a child. Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon.
I was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. I really like those sequin shirts.
A lot of people talking about Monkey Man on the internet only make the considerations of American inspiration like John Wick. While it's very clear that Dev Patel has had a varied taste of action cinema through Hollywood, South Korea, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and India. Yes, people make movies outside of the American bubble, believe it or not. And that's not a put down to American action films or American movies in general. I just think for some people who generally avoid non-American films, it tends to come from a weird cultural kind of xenophobia that I don't care for, and I think is quite childish. Back to Dev Patel crafting this character. He imagined him as this hero who would take a beating for a living, but he was righteous. All that masochism was tied up in trauma. It was just a question of what was this person's trauma. But I could sense it. It felt like a sort of starting point for something. You feel this deeply watching the film, and honestly, having seen it now, I got a very different vibe than what I was expecting based on what people were saying. The John Wick and Oldboy comparisons, while those comparisons are founded on aesthetic and style levels, that is not what this movie is. It feels very personal, it feels very visceral, it's very emotional. When I was watching Monkey Man, its themes, its heart, its core, it reminds me of something I know so deeply and so well. Monkey Man is a hero myth. What do I mean by that? Well, to discuss that, I'm going to have to scare you film and English students by pulling out Joseph Campbell in The Hero of a Thousand Faces. Borrowing the term monomyth, a word he identifies as one coined by James Joyce, he puts forth the ancient idea that the mysterious energy for inspirations, revelations, and actions in heroic stories worldwide is also universally found in human beings. People who find resonant heroic themes of challenge and questing in their own lives, in their goals, creative outpourings in their day and night dreams, are being led to a single psychic fact. That is, that the creative and spiritual lives of individuals influence the outer world as much as the mythic world influences the individual. That was taken from the intro of a more recent edition of Hero from a Thousand Faces. Joseph Campbell was a writer and professor of literature who wrote about mythology and religion and how it's tied to how stories are told and how it reflects us in our cultures. Specifically in Hero with a Thousand Faces, a very popular writing resource for many a writer, including George Lucas with Star Wars. So why is this old mythology professor relevant to the story of Dev Patel and Monkey Man? Because Monkey Man epitomizes the age-old tradition of the monomyth through a fresh new lens. It has always been the prime function of mythology and right to supply the symbols that carry the human spirit forward, in counteraction to those constant human fantasies that tend to tie it back. Symbols hold power. They inspire. They call action to order. Symbols carry more meaning sometimes than words. Symbols can change the world. Symbols can inspire hope, create change. And the myth of Monkey Man is all too clear from the start. A hero from the bottom reaching for the sun, being cursed by those on top for not staying in his place. The government figures of India take the place of the gods in this film, and Bobby is our modern Hanuman, our Monkey Man, our champion. Bobby gets an in at this restaurant cleaning dishes, working with bleach because his hands are already damaged for unknown reasons. He gets hired despite the owner, Queenie Kapoor, brushing him off at first. He befriends a criminal associate of the owner, Alfonso, who is just a joy for the rest of the film, as Bobby's sidekick almost, a really hilarious actor. I'm not going to go through the plot beat by beat since the DVD is not out yet, but when it is, I'll do another video that's a full deep dive into like the cinematography and like just go even deeper into the story and the filmmaking and everything. But I really want to give the movie full props here and now. Some small stuff I really love is the cash hand delivery scene near the beginning of the film. Really inventive and shows another side of the city, and this is how Bobby is able to buy a gun to kill Rana Singh. As Bobby talks to Alfonso more and more, he convinces him to bring him to a certain club where he does some work after revealing he fights at Tiger's Temple, telling him who to bet on, and he gets a lot of money. While he works there and gets more acquainted with the surroundings, he meets a street dog by the door, giving him food each night, really humanizing Bobby. It's just such a sweet moment. This is screenwriting 101 right here. Dev Patel gets it. A key detail at this club he's working at is the waiters hand out vials of cocaine to the people attending. He sees the man from his flashbacks there, Rana Singh. Every time he sees him, you can visually feel his blood boiling. He can barely control himself, either retreating to the bathroom or outside. The man's lady friend, Sita, tells him if he can't ignore a man like that, he probably shouldn't be working there. The man being Rana Singh. This first scene in the club focuses on two things. His disdain for the workers in the club, specifically Bobby pouring the wrong wine, and how close, physical, and aggressive he is with Sita. Because he doesn't see Sita as more than just an object. More than just like a satisfaction for him. This is a trigger for Bobby. Let's put a pin in that for later, but we're gonna go back into that near the end. He uses his dog to get the gun past security and puts bleach in Rana's cocaine vial, causing Rana to go to the bathroom to wipe up. Bobby's in there too, with a gun. Rana, just seeing Bobby as a servant, asks him to get a towel or something, not even seeing the gun, expecting his service. Bobby aims the gun at him, shaking, but he hesitates, enough for Rana to hit him before he can get the shot off clear. He does end up managing to injure him, but the struggle, which is a terrific fight scene. I always love some good use of the environment in a fight scene. They break the sink in the window, Rana's men pursuing him. He escapes through the window, going to the parking garage, escaping on Alfonso's small but quick car, which I love this car. It's so cool. Al getting on at the last minute, cutting to the chase. There's a police chase. Bobby is shot, rescued by a group of the Hira. I believe I'm pronouncing that correct. Which is a really interesting inclusion of Indian cultural and religious community to tie the story together really well. Who are the Hira? On the Indian subcontinent, Hira are transgender, intersexed, or eunuch people who live in communities that follow a kinship system known as Guru Shela system. I think the beautiful thing about this inclusion can be summed up by what Dev had to say in an interview from Variety.
This is an anthem for the underdog, the voiceless, the marginalized, and for me I wanted to take this old mythology and kind of take these characters of who I thought was this, this hero Hanuman who had lost faith in himself, didn't realize who he was and needed to be reminded by fellow outsiders of who he was, and together they waged this war, for the good and the just. And for me, I just really wanted to include the Hijra community, the third gender in India. This is at its core a revenge film about faith and the beauty of faith, and faith, we should be fighting for each other, not against each other. That's what it should do at its best. And for me, it's become rigid over time. And you look at the old, carvings in these temples in India, and like the freedom, the sexuality, all of it, the philosophy was so ahead of its time. So I wanted to try and dive into that and make that sort of the lore of the film.
This is an anthem for the underdog. I think we can confidently add the leader of this group of Hira and Monkey Man to the pillars of great and wise mentors in action and fantasy media, like Yoda, Oogway, Shifu, powerfully and charismatically played by Vipin Sharma. Before we go any further, let's meet Baba, Shakti, and Rana Singh, the villains of this film. and why Bobby hates them, saying specifically, Baba Shakti, a spiritual guru and government shill, leads the charge of forcing out the villagers on a certain settlement, wanting their land, sending Rana Singh, the corrupt police commissioner, to force out the villagers when they refuse to leave their home. The village is murdered, massacred. And worst of all, after Bobby's mother hides her son to protect him, Singh rapes her in front of Bobby, hiding upstairs, and burns her alive. Remember Bobby's hands were so messed up? Well, that's because Bobby wanted so desperately to save his mother that they burned. He couldn't save her. And that's where I return to his trigger with Sita. He remembers what Singh did to his mother. Every time he sees Singh touch Sita the way he does, he remembers violently. As the government searches to hunt Bobby down, Alpha guides Bobby through a type of psychedelic meditation to confront the trauma of his mother's death, to confront his guilt, his shame, his scars. Bobby's ghost is confronted. He has found a new purpose, training, healing, getting stronger. He has his personal purpose of defeating Singh, the man who murdered his mother, but above all, a purpose to defend the oppressed, specifically his new friends, the Hira. Their sanctuary is now threatened by the government, so he takes the money out of the offering box, returns to the Tiger's Temple, places a large bet on himself, and wins. Twice, actually. Against two combatants, with more than enough money to save the sanctuary of the Hira. Now, as Baba and the rest of the elite celebrate the finalized decision of their nationalist candidate, Bobby joins them, fighting through the building in a magnificent third act, showing off Dev Patel's brilliant grasp of the camera and how to move energetically but logically through a fight. Alpha and the rest of the Hira warriors join in on the fight in these beautiful battle dresses that would even make the Dora Mojay blush. He faces off his demons once and for all. Queenie almost shoots Bobby, but Sita saves his life, fighting against her oppressor. Bobby cuts off Queenie's thumb to access the Penat house, facing off against Rana. Rana barely being able to lay a finger on him. This is like the ending of The Matrix, you know? He's fully trained. He's better than he was ever before. This is the brilliance of Monkey Man. It is much more infinitely interesting to see him, defeat his enemies once and for all, lay into hundreds of enemies and goons when he's been down and out for most of the movie instead of being a god the whole time. It's that rise from the depths that makes it so powerful. He defeats Rana in a fistfight, going upstairs to face off against Baba. Baba wounding him with blades, but still Bobby beats him, ending his evil. Now, at the end of it, Bobby sees his mother again, wrapping the movie up in the bookend idea of Hanuman and the reward of reaching out for something bigger than yourself and fighting those who would call themselves gods.